Hello everyone. So, in case you didn't know, TF2 is an old game. Like, really old at this point. Old as dirt. And, surprisingly enough, competitive TF2 is honestly still going strong. In the sense that, you can regularly find people to play with. This is not really the case with a lot of games that are old as dirt. I mean, you look at, old Quake games, for instance, Tribes Ascend is an example where, like, just finding a server with players in it, in and of itself, is difficult. Because after a certain point, I mean, when, interest falls off a bit, just over the course of time, whether that be because new competitors arise that, iterate on the ideas that the game had, and maybe improve things, or, people just have played it enough and want to try new things or whatnot. No matter what, time takes its toll. And, populations will decline in video games. And in some cases, this can be kind of extreme to the point where the population decline itself makes it so that it's just harder to play a high-quality game. And as a result, feeds into itself so that even fewer people play it until it just kind of collapses altogether. So for a lot of these really ancient games, you might find a Discord server that tries to run pickup games. Sometimes these Discord servers themselves are inactive. But TF2 is a little different in the sense that people play it every single night. If you want to get 6 people together to play a scrimmage or a scrim against someone, that's usually pretty achievable, actually, which is impressive. And what I want to focus on today is kind of how this is the case. Because in order for a game to be played, it needs to, A, actually be fun to play, and B, needs to be playable, right? Like, at least accessible to some degree where you can play it. So, of course, 6 is, no... In no short supply of being fun. It is the most fun game, ever made. But as far as the playability and accessibility, that's something that the community itself has worked on and, tried to improve throughout the years. So I want to talk about some of these institutions, some of these support structures that the community has built up in order to make the game easier to play and a more smooth experience, which has promoted the health of 6s for, however old TF2 is at this point. I've honestly lost count after like that 10-year mark, which was some time ago now already. But anyway, so I suppose a good place to get started is with just the leagues themselves. There are multiple leagues. And historically have been multiple leagues. Back when there was like some semblance of, maybe an inkling of an idea that TF2 could have been like a real esport with developer support, it was actually supported by ESEA. And that went on for quite a while. I think, excuse me, it went into like the very early 30s as far as season count, before getting dropped. And by that point, obviously, like, TF2 was already just like this small grassroots thing pretty definitively, but it was very low maintenance, all things considered, so it wasn't that hard to support for ESEA, so they just kind of did it for a bit before stopping, unfortunately. I know SIVO was a thing that popped around for a bit. I don't remember where along the timeline that is, because I don't think it was I think it was proposed as like an ESEA replacement during that time. But nowadays, the main paid league is RGL. And when I say paid, I mean for like the higher divisions, newcomer and amateur. The first 2 skill divisions are completely free. But yeah, for like the highest level of competition, the actual like invite competition that people care about, as well as just, competitiveness in general, RGL is kind of the standard for North America. Which I should have mentioned a disclaimer that everything I'm talking about is from a North American perspective, because the different scenes are pretty separate, honestly. They have different, minor rule set changes, and they use different leagues, of course, and are just kind of different communities in general. And I'm going to provide some examples. Of course, there's plenty of overlap for some other things as well. But anyway, RGL is the main paid league for North America. Started out as a Highlander league, actually. Started by Sigafu, who some of you may know. But yeah, eventually picked up Sixes, and since then has just been the primary league of North America. Now, that being said, there is a longer standing league in North America, that being UGC, which I believe is a free league across all divisions. Now, the standard of competition is generally lower in UGC, but it's been a staple. It's been around for a very long time. And a lot of people I know actually started their first season in UGC just because it seemed more casual at a glance, I suppose. But yeah, UGC has been around and continues to be around for quite a while now. So that's as far as leagues are concerned. And so leagues make it very simple. You know, you register your team with all the players on it, and then the league will schedule you against other teams for a season, so you play matches and whatnot. But what happens when you get scheduled against a team and you actually have to play a match? Well, a big limiting factor there is the fact that you need a server, because of course you can't play the game without a server. So what I really appreciate about Sixes is that all the different communities have, well, the primary ones of Oz Fortress, TF2, and North America, all have their own server networks that players can just book servers from. So in North America and EU, it is ServeMe. And yeah, ServeMe, you can just get a server for your own use for whatever time slot completely for free, which is absolutely wonderful because, you know, while some people do actually pay for their own private servers just to have access to and be able to do whatever they want with all the time, if you're, you know, playing a pug at whatever ungodly hour people play pugs at sometimes, and, you know, no one in the call has a private server, which is more often than not the case, but you just want to play a game of Sixes, well, it's really easy. You just go get a server, and completely free. And that is something, it's very difficult to understate how good that is for the health of the scene, because it would be such a limiting factor if servers were harder to get. And this helps teams as well, because you can get these servers for your scrimmages or for your matches. Now, that being said, like in those high demand times, such as during a scrim or a match, then the availability of servers is just inherently going to be lower. Which may be a case for donating a little bit for the ServeMe Premium, which gives you access to a few more servers, as well as just, you know, being able to actually help fund these things as a community effort is definitely a good in and of itself. But yeah, ServeMe is an absolutely fantastic staple of the North American scene as far as actually getting servers goes, and this goes a huge way in making the game just way more accessible, because when anyone can just get a server for free, then suddenly it becomes very easy to just get 6 people together, find 6 people to play against, and then you just get to play Sixes just like that, which is wonderful. And again, this is something that was, you know, just worked on as a community effort. I don't know to what degree, because ServeMe at this point is quite an old institution, I guess. So I don't know to what degree it was just an individual versus maybe a group of people. But something that is integrated with every ServeMe server, and is going to be integrated with every private server that you get, is logs. Logs.tf is a website that the entire scene uses across every region, and it's quite simple. It automatically uploads some pretty advanced logs and statistics from the game that you just played. So you can just go to logs.tf, look at your profile, look at your recent logs, and it shows anything from like kills, assists, deaths, stuff like that, to damage a minute, overall damage between the two teams, which team wins which mid fight, as well as like stats like air shots and headshots and stuff. Some pretty in-depth stats, actually. It is funny, to some degree, people just, like, look at logs to cope, because they just, like, look at the logs, see that they did, like, 300 damage, and then just decide that, you know, the loss wasn't their fault or something. But overall, it's a really nice thing to have. And I will mention as well that logs are quite cool for just taking a trip down memory lane, because they're just saved forever. I mean, it's just like a small text file, essentially. So the storage is not anything crazy there. And so, you know, you can look back at a log from like 2 years ago from a match you played that was really memorable, and like be able to, you know, remember that match, as opposed to having to find the demo and like watch it or something, which no one's really going to do. Logs are just a really easy way to not only, you know, help diagnose issues in the game and figure out what was going on, but also as a way to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not store, not remember. Archive. It's a good way of just archiving the games that you played, which in and of itself is a nice thing. So yeah, logs, another absolutely wonderful thing that has been created so long ago as well. I think like the first logs might be from 2012, if I recall correctly. It has been around forever. But yeah, very nice stuff there. Now, as far as actually finding a scrimmage or a scrim to play, there also have been avenues created to make this process a little bit easier. So at a higher level, when the teams, the number of teams are a little lower, like think advanced, invite, even main for that matter. And I suppose some of this applies to lower divisions as well, but a lot of the scrim finding is going to be easier just DMing people, like, because you know who's playing pretty much. So you can just ask the team leader if they need like a scrim for this time or something. But if you're just looking for a general scrim and just trying to network a time to play, then different leagues and different places just have channels dedicated to that. I know the RGL Discord, of course, has a channel just for looking for scrims. The Team Fortress TV Discord as well, for that matter. So there's dedicated places to help schedule and find people to play with and against. And what's nice about this is that you don't really need to be signed up for a league to play sixes. Of course, discounting pugs or pickup games, which in and of themselves happen in like Discord servers with just like a friend group or something, or a more broad thing like TF2 Center or the recent RGL pugs, actually. But if you're just looking to play a non-pug, you just want to get 6 people together to play some sixes on whatever classes you want. You can even switch it up throughout the different halves. Well, you can just play a quote-unquote pug scrim, where you just get 6 people together and look for a scrim like you were a standard team assigned to a league, but you're not. You're just 6 people playing in a scrim, or scrim setting. So it works out. And again, this is a avenue of play that's kind of enabled by the fact that finding a scrim is a relatively smooth experience, right? So again, just different institutions. Institution isn't really the right word in this context, I guess. Different structures to make playing sixes easier, which of course promotes the health of it. What else is there? I suppose we can talk next about some beginner resources, because I do get asked about this a lot. And while I usually recommend, for North America at least, that people check out TF2 Coaching Central's Discord, which is, again, a resource dedicated to helping people learn sixes. But the big one, I think, at least as far as like a legacy institution goes, is Newbie Mixes, which runs every Friday. The main goal is literally just, you know, get people who may have, or who likely have never played sixes before, just into a server in a sixes environment, so they can at least get their feet wet in kind of a low stakes learning environment, which I think is very important to have, obviously. But this Newbie Mixes has been around for a very long time, like so long that my first sixes games were in newbie mixes. However many years ago, I don't even remember anymore. So it's an absolute staple of the North American scene as far as, absolute beginner stuff goes. And I think it's very important for the health of the scene that getting into it, or at least like testing the waters, is very easy to do, right? Yeah, so I think that's a base that's pretty decently covered in North America, at least. So newbie mixes, TF2 coaching central, stuff like that. Other, structures and institutions that make sixes more accessible, which is a good thing. Another thing I should talk about is that something pretty good in sixes, in my opinion, is the amount of casting coverage and streaming coverage that matches can get. Where, and this is something that has some ebb and flow, because again, like everything in sixes, it is volunteer hours pretty much. So, all the positions in RGL, stuff like, I had someone comment on a previous video like, hey, what's the trap on that girder for? It's for something like that, I suppose. But anyway, yeah, it's all volunteer. So some seasons you have a lot of casting coverage because the people who can actually put the work in to make that happen are just more available. Sometimes people's schedules are more restricted and whatnot. So again, just through the nature of volunteer effort, you're going to have some ebb and flow. But overall, a lot of high-profile games are going to get casted. At the very least, like, invite grand finals and most invite playoffs coverage is going to be available. But it's really nice how you have extremely talented producers and casters that are willing to put the time in to cover matches. And it's, for all things considered, quite professional, honestly. And I mean, you do have, prior casters in TF2 go on to, production careers, such as, I think Corn Pop now covers, is it Corn Pop? Jesse Chick, he goes by, well, that's just his name, I guess, but that's the alias now, I think. I could be mixing up two different casters, but I know he does Rainbow Six Siege coverage, and then, of course, like Brennan Sideshow, which, at this point, some people might not even know that they were TF2 casters initially, and that's where they, jump-started their casting careers. So, absolutely, the scene has plenty of real talent as far as casting and production goes. So it's wonderful to have these high quality, relatively professional casts for all sorts of games, which is a great thing to have, of course. So the big casting orgs, I know Critscast does do some Highlander production mostly. RGL is a big one for Highlander and sixes. They, of course, cover, sixes invite grand finals, as well as just plenty of playoffs matches and whatnot. Invite matches mostly. And then Fireside Casts is a relatively new face on the scene, at least within the past, year and a half, maybe 2 years or so. But they've done a great job. And, plenty of coverage there across a wider array of divisions as well, which I think is nice. I think it is cool that, someone could be playing the game for, a couple seasons, half a year or something, and be able to have a match casted, even though they're not like an invite player or anything like that, which is very cool. So production is a big thing. I think it's just really great that, people can kind of play these casted matches that have a much more professional air to them. And it's always fun to watch back a cast of you playing or something. So that's great. What else is there as far as these kind of grassroots organizations and support structures? I don't know if that's everything or not. I honestly... This is actually re-recording my my mic was just not getting picked up in the previous one. Really hoping it does this time around. But yeah, since nothing's coming to mind, I will probably call things there. Yeah, TF2 or 6s specifically, I think has a very cozy future ahead, because as long as, like, you know, the game is accessible for new players, and as long as the game is playable, as in it's relatively easy to find 6 people to play against and play them, then I think that 6s can kind of just live indefinitely, because it is, of course, the most fun game ever made, so, you know, people are going to want to play it, so you just need to make these things accessible. And with things like ServeMe, logs.tf, RGL, etc., things are looking very cozy. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed the little insight into some of the details of the scene and what makes 6s, specifically North American 6s, what it is. I don't want to say I hope you guys enjoyed for a third time, so I'm just going to call it there. See you all later.